Elena had become an expert at moving through mornings without thinking too hard. Thinking meant remembering. Remembering meant feeling. And feeling, she had learned, could drag a whole day down before it even began. So she focused on tasks: boil water, lay out clothes, pack lunch, check bus schedule. She stood in front of the mirror over her small bathroom sink and adjusted the collar of her blouse for the 4th time. It still wasn't high enough. The bruise on her neck, just above the collarbone, glared back at her in the reflection, faded from last night's deep red into an ugly mix of purple and yellow. Even with makeup dabbed carefully along the edge, it was still visible, like a secret trying to escape. She pulled the fabric up again, buttoning 1 notch higher than usual. The collar scratched lightly over tender skin. She flinched. "It's fine," she whispered to herself. "They don't look that closely. No one looks that closely." The lie tasted familiar. She'd repeated versions of it to herself for years. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A name lit up the screen. She turned it face down without looking. Not today. She finished getting ready on autopilot, grabbed her bag, and stepped out into the quiet hallway. The apartment building smelled faintly of old paint and fresh laundry. On the 2nd floor, Mrs. Ramos's door was already open a crack. The older woman watched the morning news every day at this hour, volume just loud enough to hear in the hallway. "Elena," Mrs. Ramos called when she saw her passing. "You're off so early again, hija." "Morning, Mrs. Ramos," Elena said, forcing a small smile. "Just keeping ahead of the traffic." Mrs. Ramos squinted at her. "You work too much. You need to rest. And eat more. You're getting too thin." "I promise I'm eating," Elena said. "Have a good day." She didn't wait for more questions. Outside, the air bit at her cheeks, crisp and cool. The sky was still washed out pale, the sun barely up. She walked quickly to the bus stop, hands tucked into her coat pockets. The city was not quite awake yet. Delivery trucks idled along the curb. A few early commuters stood in small clusters, scarves pulled tight, eyes on their phones. The bus arrived with a hiss of brakes and the quiet groan of a long, heavy vehicle used to being ignored. She took a seat near the middle, watching the familiar route slide by through fogged-up glass. The same corner store, the same bakery, the same billboard advertising a vacation she'd never take. 20 minutes later, she stepped off a block away from a very different world. Hawthorne and gray, tall glass, dark metal, clean lines that said, "We have money, and we know exactly what we're doing with it." Elena swiped her badge at the front entrance. The security gate beeped and opened. "Morning, Elena," the guard at the desk said. "Morning, Marcus," she replied. "You're early," he noted. "You say that every day," she said. "And every day, I'm right," he countered. Her smile was small but genuine this time. "See you later." The elevator up to the executive floor glided more than moved. It smelled faintly like lemons and something expensive she couldn't name. The digital display blinked each floor number steadily upward until it landed on 25. The doors opened to hush. The executive floor always felt like stepping into another country. Soft gray carpet, frosted glass walls, the distant whir of a copier behind a closed door. She turned on the lights in reception and made her way to her desk, the one directly outside the CEO's office. Not quite inside his world, but close enough to feel the air change whenever he arrived. First, the glass doors. She took out the lint-free cloth from her drawer and wiped the handles, erasing faint fingerprints left by yesterday's stream of visitors. Then, her inbox. She woke her computer, logged into her email, and scanned the overnight messages, sorting them into mental piles. Urgent. Soon. Noise. She flagged a few for David's attention, drafted responses he could approve with a click, and updated his calendar from 3 different time zones. Routine. Safe. Predictable. She walked to the small kitchenette to start the coffee. One scoop too many, and it was too strong. One too few, and it tasted like brown water. Through trial and error in her first week, she had found the sweet spot and never missed it since. David Hawthorne liked consistency. He didn't snap when people made mistakes, not like some of the executives she'd worked under before. But he remembered things. He noticed details. And if you did your job well enough for long enough, he trusted you with things other people never touched. By 7:15, the coffee was ready, her desk was organized, and the world had not yet asked more of her than she could give. Her phone buzzed again in her bag. She ignored it. The private elevator dinged at 7:42. She stood automatically. The door slid open, and David stepped out, coat over his arm, leather briefcase in one hand, phone in the other. His dark hair was slightly tousled from the wind. His tie was straight, but she could tell from the way he moved that he'd been up late last night. "Good morning," he said, voice low and even. "Good morning, Mr. Hawthorne," she replied. He glanced at her, a quick, practiced sweep, taking in her presence, the desk, the general state of things. "Any fires I should know about before I sit down?" he asked. "Nothing we can't manage," she said. "You have a 9 a.m. with acquisitions, an 11 with the board's audit committee, and a client lunch at 1. I've moved your internal review with marketing to 4, if that's okay." "Works for me," he said. He handed her his coat. She hung it on the stand in the corner, just inside the office door, exactly where he liked it. His coffee was already poured into his mug, waiting on a small tray at the edge of her desk. "Thank you," he said, picking it up. He always said it. Sometimes it surprised her. Still, after 3 years. He turned toward his office, then paused. It was subtle, a tiny stillness. He looked back at her more closely than he usually did in these quick morning exchanges. "Elena," he said. Her heart fluttered once, hard. "Yes, sir." "Step in for a moment," he said. She nodded, telling herself it was nothing. Maybe he wanted to change a meeting. Maybe there was a last-minute travel plan. She followed him into the office. The floor-to-ceiling windows along the outer wall framed the city like a painting. Buildings stacked on buildings, sunlight beginning to burn through the thin morning haze. He set his coffee on the desk. Instead of sitting, he turned to face her. From this distance, she felt acutely aware of everything. How tightly her collar was buttoned, how carefully she held herself, how much she wanted to be anywhere else right now. His gaze dropped briefly to her neck, not inappropriately, not lingering, just noticing. The faint shadow of the bruise peeked above the edge of her blouse where her collar had shifted. A small crescent of discoloration makeup hadn't fully erased. His eyes narrowed very slightly. "Elena," he said again, softer now. "What happened?" Her throat closed. "Nothing," she said quickly. "I'm fine." He didn't look convinced. He glanced toward the glass wall that looked out into reception, then walked over and lowered the blinds with a practiced motion, the soft mechanical whir filling the brief silence. Then he crossed to the office door, opened it just enough to speak through, and called out, "I'm in a private meeting. Please hold all calls for a bit." He closed the door. The faint click sounded final. He turned back to her. "You're not in trouble," he said, voice calm. "I need you to know that." Her hands hanging at her sides trembled. Her brain scrambled for a believable story. "You bumped into something," he said quietly, not accusing, almost prompting. "Walked into a shelf, hit a cabinet door." "Yes," she blurted. I was clumsy. It's nothing." His gaze stayed on her face, not the bruise. He didn't step closer in a way that would trap her between him and the desk. Instead, he moved to one of the chairs in front of it and sat, leveling their height. "Sit down, Elena," he said gently. "I'm okay standing," she replied automatically. "I'm sure you are," he said. "Sit anyway." The edge of authority in his tone smoothed the command into something she found herself obeying without thinking too hard. She sank into the chair opposite him, back straight, hands folded tightly in her lap. He took a breath, as if deciding how far to go. "That mark wasn't there yesterday," he said, "or the day before. I notice things. It's part of my job." Shame rushed hot under her skin. "I can cover it better tomorrow," she said quickly. I didn't think. "That's not what I'm asking," he said, cutting her off, but not harshly. "I'm not concerned about the optics, Elena. I'm concerned about you." The last word landed harder than she wanted it to. She stared at him. "I shouldn't have brought it here," she whispered. "I tried to hide it. I thought the collar." "You didn't bring anything here except yourself," he said. "The rest is what someone else did." Her breath hitched. He waited. He seemed very good at waiting. "Elena," he said, lowering his voice, "did someone hurt you?" The question was simple. The answer was not. She could feel the familiar reflex rising, the one that had saved her from pitying looks and uncomfortable conversations and people who didn't actually want to know. "I'm fine. It was an accident. It's not as bad as it looks." The words lined up in her throat, ready to march out like soldiers. But his eyes were steady, not impatient, not casual. There was something in them she rarely saw when people asked questions about her life. Genuine concern. The first syllable broke. She swallowed, tried again. "It's complicated," she managed. "I believe you," he said. "But complicated doesn't mean not real." A single tear escaped before she could swipe it away. She cursed herself silently for it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded white handkerchief. Not paper, but fabric. Clean. He set it on the edge of the desk, close enough for her to take, far enough that she had to reach for it herself. She did. "Thank you," she murmured, pressing it gently to the corner of her eye. He didn't say, "Don't cry." He didn't say, "It's okay." He didn't rush to smooth over the moment with platitudes. He let the silence hold. "My ex," she said finally, the words scraping something raw on the way out. "He came by last night." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I told him I didn't want to talk," she continued. "I asked him to leave. He didn't like that answer." Her fingers moved unconsciously to her collar, hovering over the bruise. "He grabbed me," she whispered. "It's not." She cut herself off, catching the familiar phrase before it escaped. "Not that bad." "It happened fast. I pushed him away. He left." "Has he done that before?" David asked. She stared at her hands. "Elena," he said quietly, "this only works if you're honest." "Yes," she said, the word barely audible. "Not always like this. Sometimes just blocking the door, taking my phone, standing too close." "Has he ever hit you?" he asked, voice controlled. Her shoulders tensed. She didn't answer quickly enough. "That's enough of an answer," he said, not pressing the point further. A fresh wave of shame crashed over her. "I know what you're thinking," she said, bitterly. Why didn't she leave sooner? Why did she let it get this far? "I'm not thinking that," he said. She looked up sharply, expecting to see doubt. He met her gaze steadily. "I'm thinking about how many systems failed you before this office ever saw you," he said. "How many people overlooked small signs. How much you've had to carry alone." Her throat tightened again. "You're my boss," she said weakly. "You're not supposed to carry any of this." "Being your boss means I'm responsible for your safety here," he replied. "And when something outside this building puts that safety at risk, I don't get to look the other way." He leaned back slightly, giving her space. "I'm not going to ask for every detail," he said. "That's your story to tell when and if you want to. But I am going to ask you one thing. Do you feel safe leaving this building at the end of the day? The question landed heavier than she expected. She thought of the dim parking garage, the echo of her footsteps, the way her heart always beat a little faster near the stairwell. I don't know, she said honestly. Thank you, he said softly. That's important. He straightened a little, shifting into decision-making mode. Here's what we're going to do, he said, and you can tell me if any part of this feels wrong to you. She blinked. Okay. First, he said, you are not staying late this week, or for a while. I'll adjust your schedule. You'll leave while it's still light, while there are plenty of people around. She opened her mouth to protest. He held up a hand. This isn't a punishment or a demotion, he said. It's a safety measure. You've more than earned the right not to walk to your car alone at 9 p.m. She hesitated. Second, he continued, I want to connect you with a legal professional who handles situations like this. Someone kind, discreet, and competent. Just a conversation. No obligation to act beyond what you choose, but you deserve to know your options. Fear flickered in her eyes. I don't want to make him angrier, she said. If he finds out, doing nothing hasn't made him less dangerous, David said gently. Information won't hurt you. It might give you ground to stand on. She breathed in shakily. And third, he said, starting tonight, you're not getting yourself home alone. I'll arrange a car service through the company. They'll take you home and pick you up in the morning, if you're comfortable with that. Her instinct to refuse surged. I don't want to be a burden, she blurted. You're not, he said immediately. You're an employee who's given this place years of work and stability. Making sure you get home safe is the bare minimum of what we owe you as a company, and what I owe you as a person. No one had ever put it like that, not owing her pity, owing her safety. She swallowed hard. It feels like too much, she whispered. It's not enough, he countered quietly. But it's a start. Her eyes stung again. She pressed the handkerchief to them briefly. Why are you doing this? She asked. Most bosses would tell me to talk to HR and keep personal drama out of the office. Because you're not drama, he said. You're a person. And because I pay attention. I've seen how you hold this place together on days when most people would have called in sick. I've watched you stay late to fix other people's mistakes. The moment your safety is on the line, that becomes my business. She had no defense against that. Okay, she said quietly. I'll talk to your legal contact, and I'll try the car. For a while. Thank you, he said. I'll have my assistant set up a meeting for tomorrow afternoon. It will be listed as a generic appointment on your calendar. No details. If at any point you feel uncomfortable, you tell me. Understand? She nodded. He stood. Take 10 minutes, he said. Get some water. Breathe. Then we'll start the day. If anyone asks, you're in a meeting with me. Because you are. She managed a small, watery smile. Yes, sir. She rose from the chair. At the door, she paused. Mr. Hawthorne, she said. Yes? I'm scared, she admitted softly. Of what happens next. Of what he'll do if he finds out someone else knows. He nodded slowly. I can't promise you nothing will ever feel scary again, he said. But I can promise you this. You won't face it alone. Not anymore. Something in her chest, wound tight for so long, loosened a fraction. Okay, she whispered. She stepped out of his office into the familiar quiet of the executive floor. The glass doors, the soft carpet, the hum of distant phones, everything looked the same. But as she sat back at her desk and saw the new meeting invitation appear on her calendar, she realized one thing had changed. Her pain was no longer a secret she carried entirely by herself. Someone else had seen it. And instead of looking away, he had asked, "Who did this?" And meant beneath it, "How can I help you make sure it doesn't happen again?" The rest of that morning blurred. Elena moved through her tasks with the kind of mechanical precision she'd perfected over years of holding herself together in public. She answered emails, confirmed meetings, routed calls, printed documents, delivered files. Every motion felt like walking through water. No one asked if she was okay. No one looked twice. That, at least, was familiar. Except now, David Hawthorne knew, and the weight of that knowledge sat differently than she'd expected. Not heavier, but sharper, like something that demanded acknowledgement instead of burying. At 11:47 a.m., a calendar notification popped up on her screen. Meeting, legal consultation, confidential. Time, 2 p.m. tomorrow. Location, conference room. B. A note appeared below it. I'll walk you there and introduce you. You can ask me to stay or step out. Your choice. D.H. Her throat tightened. He hadn't used his full signature, just initials. Small. Personal. She stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed a reply. Thank you. She almost added more. An apology, a deflection, something to soften the vulnerability, but stopped herself. He'd asked for honesty. She hit send. At 12:30, her phone buzzed in her bag. She'd been ignoring it all morning. This time, out of habit more than intention, she glanced at the screen. 3 missed calls. 7 unread messages, all from the same number. Her stomach twisted. She turned the phone face down without reading them. Her hands shook slightly as she refocused on the spreadsheet in front of her. The elevator chimed. David stepped out with 2 takeout bags in hand, the faint smell of something savory following him. Lunch meeting got canceled, he said as he approached her desk. Figured I'd make use of the time. He set one of the bags on the edge of her desk. She blinked. What's this? Food, he said. For you. I brought something, she said automatically. I'm sure you did, he replied. But humor me. You haven't taken a break yet. She stared at the bag. Inside was a neatly wrapped sandwich, a small container of fruit, and a bottle of sparkling water. You didn't have to do this, she said quietly. I know, he said. But if I eat alone in my office, I'll just keep working. So you're doing me a favor. It was a kind lie. She took the bag. Thank you. He nodded and headed into his office, leaving the door slightly ajar, not closed, not wide open. Just enough to signal I'm here if you need me without hovering. She unwrapped the sandwich slowly. It was good. Better than good. Fresh bread. Real ingredients. The kind of lunch she usually couldn't justify buying for herself. She ate it at her desk, and for the first time that day, something other than dread filled the hollow space in her chest. At 4:47 p.m., David called her into his office again. Your updated schedule is in your inbox, he said, gesturing to his computer screen where a draft was open. You'll leave at 5 hours sharp. Marcus at security has been notified. The car service will meet you at the front entrance. She nodded. Are you okay with that? He asked. Yes, she said. I think so. He studied her for a moment. If at any point you're not, he said, you tell me. This isn't set in stone. We adjust as needed. Okay, she said softly. He stood. I'll walk you down, he said. She blinked. You don't have to. I know, he said. I'm doing it anyway. At exactly 5 wide p.m., they stepped into the elevator together. It was strange, standing beside him in a context that wasn't work-related. He didn't check his phone, didn't scroll through emails, just stood quietly as the elevator descended. The doors opened to the lobby. Marcus looked up from his desk and gave a small nod. Outside the glass doors, a dark sedan idled at the curb. A driver in a simple uniform stepped out and opened the back door. Ms. Morales? He said. Yes, she replied. I'll be your driver this evening and tomorrow morning, if that works for you. She glanced at David. He nodded once, a quiet reassurance. That works, she said. She turned back to David. "Thank you for all of this." "You don't need to keep thanking me," he said. "Just get home safe." She stepped toward the car, then paused. "Mr. Hawthorne?" "Yes?" "I don't know how to do this," she admitted quietly. "How to let someone help." His expression softened. "One step at a time," he said. "That's all any of us can do." She nodded and got into the car. As it pulled away, she looked back through the rear window. He was still standing there, hands in his pockets, watching until the car turned the corner. The driver was professional, polite, quiet. He didn't ask personal questions. When they reached her building, he waited until she was inside the front door before driving away. She climbed the stairs slowly, keys already in hand. At her door, she paused, listened. No footsteps, no voices, no shadow lingering in the hallway. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and locked it behind her. Deadbolt, chain, everything. Then she leaned against it and exhaled. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out. A message from David. "Let me know when you're home safe," she typed back quickly. "I'm home. Thank you." His reply came within seconds. "Good. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we keep moving forward." She set the phone down and sank onto the couch. For the first time in longer than she could remember, the silence in her apartment didn't feel suffocating. It felt like breathing room. The next afternoon, at 1:55 p.m., David appeared at her desk. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, though her palms were damp. They walked together down the hall to Conference Room B, a smaller, more private space with frosted glass walls and a door that closed. Inside, a woman in her late 30s stood as they entered. She wore a navy blazer, minimal jewelry, and had the kind of presence that felt both professional and warm. "Elena," David said, "this is Lisa Rodriguez. She's one of the best attorneys I know." "Lisa, this is Elena Morales." Lisa extended her hand. "It's nice to meet you, Elena." "You too," Elena said, shaking it. David gestured to the chairs. "I'll step out unless you'd like me to stay." Elena glanced at Lisa, then back at him. "You can go," she said softly. "I'll be okay." He nodded. "I'll be in my office. Text me if you need anything." He left, closing the door gently behind him. Lisa sat and motioned for Elena to do the same. "First," Lisa said, "I want you to know that this conversation is entirely confidential. Nothing you say here leaves this room unless you give me explicit permission. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to help you understand your options." Elena's shoulders dropped slightly. "Thank you," she said. "Second," Lisa continued, "I know this is hard. You don't have to tell me everything today. We can go as slowly as you need." Elena nodded. "Can I start by asking a few basic questions?" Lisa asked. "Yes," Elena said. "How long were you with your ex?" 2 years, Elena said. "We broke up about 6 months ago." "And he's been coming around since then?" Elena nodded. "Not every day, but often. He texts, shows up at my building, waits for me sometimes." "Has he ever threatened you?" Lisa asked. "Not in words," Elena said, "but the way he stands, the way he looks at me, it feels like a threat." Lisa wrote something down. "Has he ever put his hands on you before the incident David mentioned?" Elena's jaw tightened. "Yes," she said quietly. "A few times, when we were together, and once since the breakup." "Do you have any documentation?" Lisa asked. "Photos? Text messages? Anything?" Elena shook her head. "I deleted most of it. I didn't want to see it." "That's completely understandable," Lisa said. "But moving forward, if he contacts you again, save it. Screenshot it. Don't respond, but keep the record." "Okay," Elena said. "Now," Lisa said, "let me walk you through what a restraining order looks like and what it can do for you." For the next 40 minutes, Lisa explained the process with patience and clarity. What counted as harassment? what evidence helped, what a restraining order could and couldn't do. She didn't sugarcoat it. "It's not a magic shield," Lisa said, "but it's a legal boundary. If he violates it, there are consequences. It also sends a message that you're serious." "What if it makes him angrier?" Elena asked, the fear she'd been holding all day finally surfacing. "That's a valid concern," Lisa said. "And it's why we also talk about safety planning. Where you live, how you get to work, who you can call. You don't do this alone." Elena's eyes stung. "I've been alone for so long," she whispered. Lisa's expression softened. "You're not alone anymore," she said. "You have people in your corner now, and I'm one of them." Elena nodded, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. "What do I do next?" she asked. "You think about it," Lisa said. "No rush. When you're ready, you call me. I'll walk you through every step." She slid a business card across the table. "My direct line is on there," she said. "Call me anytime, day or night." Elena took the card, fingers curling around it like a lifeline. "Thank you," she said. "You're welcome," Lisa replied. "And Elena?" "Yes?" "You did the hardest part already," Lisa said. "You told someone. The rest? We'll figure it out together." When Elena stepped out of the conference room, David was waiting in the hallway, leaning against the wall with his phone in hand. He looked up when he heard the door. "How did it go?" he asked. "It was good," she said. "Scary, but good." He nodded. "Do you feel like you have a clearer picture?" "Yes," she said. "Think so." "Good," he said. "And just so you know, whatever you decide, I support it. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for." She smiled faintly. "You keep saying that." "Because I mean it," he replied. They walked back to the executive floor together. As she sat down at her desk, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Her stomach dropped. She opened it. "You think you can ignore me? You think you can just move on? I'll be back, and you'll talk to me." Her hands shook. David, halfway into his office, noticed. "Elena," he said. She looked up, face pale. He crossed to her desk immediately. "What happened?" he asked. She turned the phone toward him without a word. His jaw tightened as he read the message. "Screenshot that," he said. "Right now." She did, fingers trembling. "Send it to yourself via email," he continued. "Then forward it to Lisa. This is exactly what she needs." She nodded, doing as he said. When she finished, he gently took the phone from her hand. "Block the number," he said. "Now." She hesitated. "What if he?" "He already knows you're not responding," David said. "Blocking it just removes his access. Do it." She blocked the number. Her hands were still shaking when she set the phone down. David crouched beside her desk, bringing himself to her eye level. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. "Saving that message gives you evidence. Blocking him takes away his power. You're stronger than you think." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I don't feel strong," she whispered. "You don't have to feel it to be it," he said. "Strength isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite it." She nodded, wiping at her face. "Go home early today," he said. "The car's already downstairs. I'll handle the rest." "But I have." "I'll handle it," he repeated, firmer this time. "Go." She stood slowly, gathering her things. At the elevator, she turned back. He was standing at his office door, arms crossed, watching her, not hovering, just present. She raised one hand in a small wave. He nodded. The elevator doors closed. That night, as she sat on her couch with the deadbolt locked and the chain in place, her phone buzzed again. She tensed, then saw the name. David Hawthorne. "You're not alone in this. Tomorrow, we keep going. One step at a time." She typed back slowly. "Thank you. For everything." His reply was immediate. "You don't have to thank me for doing what's right. But you're welcome." She set the phone down and pulled a blanket around herself. For the first time in months, she felt something fragile but real beginning to grow in the hollow space fear had carved out. Hope. Mornings started to feel different. Not safe, not yet, but less like waking up into a battle she was destined to lose. Elena still rose before sunrise, still boiled water, still stood in front of the mirror longer than she wanted to, checking her reflection for anything that might start conversations she wasn't ready to have. The bruise on her neck faded slowly. What didn't fade as easily was the instinct to flinch every time her phone buzzed. On the third morning after the meeting with Lisa, she stood in her tiny kitchen, stirring a spoonful of honey into her tea, when her phone vibrated on the counter. Her body tightened. She forced herself to look. This time, the preview was just an email notification from Lisa. Received the screenshot. This strengthens your case. Call when you're ready. You're not alone. Her shoulders dropped a fraction. She took a sip of tea. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Her breath caught. She watched it ring until it went to voicemail, then set the phone face down with deliberate care. She wasn't ready to listen. Not yet. But at least now, if he left a message, she had somewhere to send it. At the office, David didn't hover. He didn't pull her into his office every hour to ask how she was. He didn't look at her like she might shatter. Instead, he did something far more disarming. He treated her like a whole person. "Good morning," he said each day, the same as before. But now his eyes lingered a moment longer, checking, not prying. He continued to thank her for the coffee, continued to trust her with his calendar, his documents, the endless stream of emails that flowed through their shared corner of the company. But whenever she needed to step away, to take a call from Lisa, to breathe for 5 minutes in the break room, to collect herself after a sudden spike of fear, he let her. No questions, no raised eyebrows, no resentment. Once, after she returned from one of those breaks, she found a sticky note on her monitor in his handwriting. "You're doing more than enough. Don't doubt that." She tried to tell herself he'd written it for any valued employee he saw struggling. The warmth in her chest didn't listen. The ex did not disappear. He didn't storm the office, didn't show up in the lobby screaming, didn't cause a dramatic scene that would get him dragged away quickly and cleanly. That would have been almost easier to deal with. Instead, he stayed in the shadows just outside her daily routes. A glimpse of a familiar jacket across the street one evening. The feeling of being watched as she unlocked her building door. A voice in her head, his voice, reminding her of all the times he'd said, "No one's going to care. No one's going to help you. It's just us." Except now, it wasn't just them. On a Thursday, as she left the building at 5 with the driver waiting, she noticed a figure leaning against a car across the street. Too far to be sure. Close enough for her body to recognize the posture before her mind did. She froze for a second. The driver noticed. "Ms. Morales?" he asked. "You okay?" She swallowed. "I think so." "You want me to pull around to the side entrance?" he offered. She thought of Lisa's card in her bag, of the screenshot sitting in an email folder, of David's quiet promise. "No," she said. "Let's just go." She got into the car without looking back, but as they pulled away, she couldn't help it. She glanced over her shoulder. The figure across the street watched the car leave, didn't move, didn't follow, her heart hammered all the way home. That night, she finally called Lisa. "I think he's still watching me," she said, voice shaking. "Thank you for telling me," Lisa said. "We need to formalize this. Are you ready to start the process?" Elena closed her eyes. Images flashed through her mind. His hand on her throat, the bruise in the mirror. David closing his office blinds and saying, Who did this? Yes, she whispered. I'm ready. The next week was paperwork and phone calls and details that made everything feel more real. She met with Lisa again. This time, David asked if she wanted him there. Your choice, he said. No ego attached. She thought about it, about how he'd been steady without crowding her, about how his presence made her feel less like she was walking into an unfamiliar building alone. Can you stay? She asked quietly. Of course, he said. In the meeting, he rarely spoke. He sat beside her, listening, occasionally asking clarifying questions that she wouldn't have thought to ask. When she faltered, he didn't answer for her, but he stayed. Solid, a quiet anchor. When she signed the first set of forms, her hand shaking slightly, Lisa looked at her with something like pride. This is not weakness, Lisa said. This is strength. You're drawing a line and saying, no more. That takes courage. David's hand rested briefly on the table, near hers, but not touching unless she reached out. She did, just for a second. Her fingers brushed his knuckles. He didn't move, didn't startle, didn't make it weird. He simply stayed. Afterward, in the hallway, she let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. That was a lot, she said. Yes, he agreed. Are you sure this isn't too much trouble? She asked. The old fear, the old script creeping in. Getting lawyers involved, security, schedules, drivers. You could have just told me to go to HR like everyone else. I could have, he said, and I chose not to. Why? She pressed. He held her gaze. Because I've spent years building companies and portfolios and making decisions for people who will be just fine, with or without me, he said quietly. I'm not interested in being the kind of man who notices real harm and calls it personal matters. I don't want that on my conscience. Her eyes stung. You keep talking like you're responsible for me, she said. In here? He nodded toward the office. Yes. Outside? I'm not responsible for you. I'm responsible to you. There's a difference. What's the difference? She asked. Being responsible for you would mean trying to control every choice you make, he said. Being responsible to you means showing up when you're in danger, offering support, and respecting your decisions, even when they scare me. She swallowed. That sounds heavy, she said. It is, he replied. But it's a weight I choose. The word choose stayed with her long after they returned to their respective desks. The restraining order wasn't instant. Nothing in the legal system ever was. There were forms, a court date, descriptions she had to put into words, the kind that left her shaken and raw after each retelling. But she didn't go to the courthouse alone. Lisa was there. And on the bench outside the courtroom, while they waited to be called in, David sat quietly beside her. He didn't belong there, technically. He wasn't a relative. He wasn't a partner. He wasn't even mentioned in the paperwork. But when she'd asked, tentatively, would it be crazy if I wanted you there? He'd answered without hesitation. I'll be there, he'd said, if you want me. Now, as they waited, he said nothing. He just sat, hands loosely clasped, gaze forward. At one point, she noticed his thumb tapping a barely audible rhythm against his fingers. He was nervous. For her, somehow, that made her breathe a little easier. Inside the courtroom, everything was fluorescent lights and legal language. Her ex was there, on the other side of the room. Seeing him under those stark lights, with a court officer between them, shook her. Part of her wanted to shrink, to apologize, to make it all go away. Another part, the part that remembered David saying, no one deserves to feel unsafe, and Lisa saying, you're not alone anymore, made her stand up straight. She answered the judge's questions. Lisa guided her when she faltered. Her ex spoke too, defensive and dismissive, trying to turn the story into something small and overblown. It wasn't. The judge granted a temporary order that day. Elena walked out of the building feeling both lighter and more exposed than she ever had. Outside, in the cold air, David turned to her. "You did well," he said. "I feel like I'm going to throw up," she admitted. "That doesn't mean you didn't do well," he replied. "It means you did something hard." She looked up at him, blinking away the dizziness. "Thank you for being here," she said. "You don't have to keep thanking me," he said, but there was warmth in his eyes. "I'm exactly where I want to be." Back at the office, whispers began, not about the restraining order. That part was tightly contained, but about the CEO and his assistant leaving together, about private meetings, about the way his gaze found her across the room. Most of it never reached her ears directly, but she felt it sometimes, the sidelong looks, the half-finished sentences. One afternoon, as she walked past the break room, she heard a voice say, "Well, she must be doing something right to get that kind of attention." She froze. Another voice replied, sharper than she expected. "Or maybe he's just not a complete jerk and cares about his staff." Elena recognized that second voice, Dana from HR. She almost cried from the unexpected defense. At her desk, she stared at her screen long after the cursor stopped blinking. David must have noticed the slight change in her posture, the way her shoulders hunched a fraction. He stepped out of his office. "Elena," he said, "could you come in for a moment?" Her stomach fluttered. Had he heard? Was he angry about the gossip? She walked in, closing the door behind her. "Is everything okay?" he asked. She blinked. "Shouldn't I be asking you that?" He smiled faintly. "I mean with you. You look elsewhere." She hesitated, then decided to tell the truth. "I heard some people talking," she said. "About you, about me, about what this looks like." His expression cooled. "What did they say?" he asked. "It doesn't matter," she said quickly. "It matters enough that it changed your posture," he replied. "So it matters." She exhaled. "Someone implied," she said slowly, "that I must be doing something extra to get your attention, that this support must come with strings." Anger flickered in his eyes. "Listen to me carefully," he said. "You have never been asked to do anything outside your role to receive my respect or support. You never will be. If anyone implies otherwise, I want to know their name." She swallowed. "I don't want to cause trouble," she said. "Standing up for you isn't trouble," he said. "It's my responsibility." "It's okay," she said quietly. Dana shut it down. His expression eased slightly. "Of course she did." He leaned against the edge of his desk, crossing his arms, not in defensiveness, but in thought. "I'm aware," he said slowly, "that my position complicates things. People will assume things. They'll project motivations onto both of us. I can't control their thoughts. But I can control my behavior. And I can make sure that anyone in this building knows that your value here is not conditional on making me comfortable." She looked at him. "You keep saying things like that," she said. "Like you've thought about this a lot." "I have," he admitted. "I've worked under men who use their power badly. I'm not interested in becoming them by accident." Her chest ached for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. "Does all of this," she gestured vaguely between them, "ever feel like too much?" "Yes," he said honestly, "and I still want to be here." The simplicity of it disarmed her. "Me too," she said softly. "Even when it scares me." He nodded. "Then we keep going," he said. "Carefully, honestly, one step at a time." By the end of that month, Elena's life didn't look dramatically different from the outside. She still took the bus sometimes, on days she chose. She still showed up early, organized files, brewed coffee. She still lived in the same small apartment. But the internal map had changed. There were boundaries now. Legal ones, emotional ones. There were people in her corner. Lisa, who answered her calls. Marcus, who watched the security cameras with an extra eye for her safety. Dana, who shut down gossip before it grew teeth. And David, the man who signed her paycheck and controlled 1,000 moving parts, and who still found time to ask, quietly, "Are you okay?" And mean it. One evening, as she gathered her things at 5, he stepped out of his office. "Elena," he said. "Yes?" "Do you have plans tonight?" he asked. "Just me and my couch," she said. "Would you be interested," he said carefully, "in coming by a small gathering I'm hosting this weekend? Nothing formal. A few friends, people I trust. Good food, too many opinions about sports." She blinked. "You want me to meet your friends?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "Not as my assistant, as someone important to me." Her heart stuttered. "David," she said slowly. It was the first time she'd used his first name out loud. It felt like stepping somewhere new. "I don't know if I'm ready for that." "That's okay," he said immediately. "No pressure. Just an invitation. You can think about it. Say no. Say maybe. Say yes and change your mind. The offer will still be there." She searched his face for impatience, found none. "I'll think about it," she said. "Good," he replied. "Now go home. Rest. That's an order." She smiled. "Yes, sir," she said, then corrected herself. "Yes, David." His answering smile was small but brilliant. As she rode home, looking out at the city lights, she realized something. Her story had not become a fairy tale overnight. Her fear had not magically disappeared. Her ex was still out there. The restraining order, a new line, not an absolute shield. But she was no longer the woman who hid every bruise in silence, convinced no one would notice. Someone had. Someone had asked, "Who did this?" and then stayed for the answer. This part of her new life had not ended with a dramatic rescue. It had ended with something quieter, deeper, and more enduring. The beginning of trust. Elena stood in front of her closet on Saturday morning, staring at a row of clothes that suddenly felt like a test she hadn't studied for. What did you wear to a gathering at your boss's house when he'd invited you, not as his assistant, but as someone important to him? She'd already pulled out and discarded 3 options. Too formal, too casual, too trying too hard. Her phone buzzed on the bed behind her. She turned, half expecting another message from an unknown number. The restraining order had slowed them, but not stopped them entirely. Instead, it was David. No dress code. Come as you are, literally. If you show up in jeans and a sweater, you'll fit right in. She exhaled, a small laugh escaping. She typed back, "You're making this sound very low pressure." His reply came immediately. "That's because it is. These are people I trust. They'll like you because I do. That's it." Her chest tightened. "Okay, I'll be there." She set the phone down and looked back at the closet. Jeans, a soft cream sweater, ankle boots. Simple. Real. Her. She could do this. David's house sat 20 minutes outside the city, tucked into a neighborhood where trees outnumbered streetlights and driveways stretched long enough to feel private. The driver pulled up to a 2-story home with warm light spilling from the windows and the faint hum of conversation drifting into the evening air. Elena's palms were damp. The driver opened her door. "You okay, Ms. Morales?" "Ask me in an hour," she said. He smiled. "You'll be fine." She walked up the stone path to the front door, her heart beating too fast. Before she could knock, the door opened. David stood there, dressed in dark jeans and a simple navy sweater, barefoot. He looked different. Less CEO, more human. "Hi," he said, smiling. "Hi," she replied, suddenly aware of how small her voice sounded. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. She crossed the threshold into warmth. The house smelled like garlic, rosemary, and something sweet baking in the oven. Soft jazz played from a speaker somewhere deeper inside. Voices floated from what she assumed was the living room. "You can leave your coat here," David said, gesturing to a hook near the door. She slipped off her jacket, and he hung it carefully beside his own. "Nervous?" he asked quietly. "Terrified," she admitted. "Good," he said. "That means you care. Come on, I'll introduce you." He led her down a short hallway into an open living room with high ceilings and comfortable furniture that looked lived in rather than staged. 4 people were scattered around the space. 2 on a couch, 1 in an armchair, 1 leaning against the counter that separated the living room from the kitchen. They all turned when David and Elena entered. "Everyone," David said. "This is Elena. Elena, this is everyone." A woman with short silver hair and glasses stood first, crossing the room with a warm smile. "I'm Diane," she said, extending a hand. "I've known this one since he was running his first company out of a storage unit." Elena shook her hand. "It's nice to meet you." "Don't let him fool you into thinking this is fancy," Diane said, eyes twinkling. "He tried to serve us takeout in plastic containers last time." David grimaced. "Once. That happened once." "And we'll never let you forget it," a man said from the couch. He stood and walked over. Tall, early 50s, with a kind face. "I'm Marcus. Different Marcus than the one at your building. I'm the doctor friend." Elena smiled. "Nice to meet you." A younger woman waved from the armchair. "I'm Priya. Work in tech and beat David at chess every time we play." "She's won twice," David corrected. "Out of 3 games," Priya shot back. "That's a winning record." The last person, leaning against the counter, raised a glass in greeting. "And I'm Sam. I handle investments for people who have more money than sense. Present company included." David rolled his eyes. "Ignore him? He thinks he's funnier than he is." "Prove me wrong," Sam said. The room settled into easy laughter. Elena felt the tightness in her chest ease slightly. "Wine? Water? Something stronger?" David asked her. "Water's good," she said. "Coming up," he said, heading into the kitchen. Diane patted the spot beside her on the couch. "Sit. Tell me, how long have you been working with him?" 3 years, Elena said, sitting carefully. "And you haven't quit yet?" Diane asked, eyebrows raised. "Impressive." "He's not that bad," Elena said, surprising herself with how easily the defense came. Diane smiled knowingly. "No, he's not. But it's nice to hear someone else say it." David returned with a glass of water and handed it to her. "Don't let them scare you off," he said. "They're mostly harmless." "Mostly," Marcus agreed. David sat in the chair closest to Elena, close enough to be present but not crowding. The conversation flowed naturally after that. They talked about work, but not in the corporate, transactional way Elena was used to. These people asked real questions, listened to answers, disagreed without cruelty. At one point, Priya asked Elena what she did outside of work. "Honestly," Elena said, "I don't do much. I've been figuring some things out." "That's code for life's been rough," Sam said, not unkindly. "We've all been there." David's gaze flicked to her, checking. She gave him a small nod. "I'm okay." "I used to paint," Elena said after a moment. "Watercolors mostly. I haven't picked up a brush in a while." "Why not?" Diane asked. Elena hesitated. "I guess I convinced myself I didn't have time, or space, or permission." "Permission from who?" Priya asked. "Myself, I think," Elena said quietly. David spoke then, his voice gentle. "You should start again, if you want to." "Maybe," she said. "No, maybe," Diane said firmly. "Do it. Life's too short to wait for the right moment. Make the moment right." Elena smiled despite herself. You sound like a motivational poster. I'll take that as a compliment, Diane said. Dinner was casual. Roasted chicken, vegetables, fresh bread, and a dessert Priya had brought that involved too much chocolate and not enough regret. They ate around a large wooden table in the dining room, plates passed with easy familiarity. Elena watched the way they interacted, the teasing, the inside jokes, the way David laughed, really laughed, at something Sam said, throwing his head back without holding anything in. She realized she'd never seen him like this, unguarded. At one point, Marcus asked her, "So how does it feel working for someone who probably checks his email at 3 a.m.? I wouldn't know, Elena said. I'm asleep at 3 a.m. David raised an eyebrow. Are you implying I have bad work-life balance? I'm stating it as fact, she replied. The table erupted in laughter. I like her, Sam declared. She's got teeth. David smiled into his wine glass. Yes, she does. Elena's cheeks warmed. After dinner, people drifted into smaller conversations. Elena found herself on the back patio with Diane, looking out at the dark yard lit by string lights. You're good for him, Diane said after a moment. Elena blinked. I'm his assistant. That's your job, Diane said. I'm talking about what you are to him as a person. Elena looked down at her hands. I don't know what I am to him. He does, Diane said simply. And that's rare. David doesn't let people in easily. He's careful, thoughtful, sometimes to a fault. But you, he talks about you differently. How? Elena asked, almost afraid of the answer. Like you matter, Diane said. Not because of what you do for him, because of who you are. Elena's throat tightened. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Of what it means if this is more than work. Of what happens if I mess it up. Diane turned to her. Can I give you some unsolicited advice? Please, Elena said. Stop waiting for permission to take up space in his life, Diane said. If he's making room for you, step into it. Not because you owe him, but because you deserve to be somewhere you're valued. Elena's eyes stung. Thank you, she whispered. Diane squeezed her shoulder gently. Anytime. Later, as people began to leave, Elena found herself helping David clear dishes in the kitchen. You don't have to do that, he said. I know, she replied, but I want to. They worked in comfortable silence for a while. Plates rinsed, glasses stacked, leftovers wrapped. At one point, their hands brushed, reaching for the same dish. They both froze. Elena pulled back first. Sorry. Don't be, he said. She looked up at him. He was closer than she'd realized. Thank you for tonight, she said softly. For inviting me. For letting me see this side of your life. Thank you for coming, he replied. I know it wasn't easy. It was easier than I thought it would be, she admitted. Your friends are wonderful. They liked you, he said. A lot. How do you know? She asked. Because Sam already texted me asking when you're coming back, he said, showing her his phone. She laughed. The sound filled the quiet kitchen. David smiled, and something in his expression shifted. Elena, he said. Yes? I need to say something, he said carefully. And I need you to know you can tell me to stop anytime. Her pulse quickened. Okay. He set down the dish he'd been holding and turned to face her fully. These last few weeks, he began, have reminded me that the most important things in life aren't in boardrooms or on balance sheets. They're in moments like this. Quiet. Real. With people who matter. She didn't move. You matter to me, he continued, not just as someone who works for me, as someone I trust, someone I want in my life, someone I care about. Her breath caught. I know the timing is complicated, he said. I know there are power dynamics and professional boundaries, and 100 reasons why this could be a terrible idea. But I also know that I don't want to pretend I only see you as my assistant when that stopped being true months ago." Her heart hammered. "What are you saying?" she whispered. "I'm saying," he said slowly, "that if you feel even a fraction of what I feel when you walk into a room, I'd like to explore what that means. Carefully. Honestly. At whatever pace you're comfortable with." Tears pricked her eyes. "David," she said, his name trembling on her lips. "I don't know how to do this. I've spent so long just trying to survive. I don't know how to let someone in without being afraid they'll use it against me." "Then we go slow," he said. "We talk. We set boundaries. We check in. And if at any point you need to step back, we step back. No guilt. No pressure." She searched his face. "You really mean that?" she said. "I do," he replied. She took a shaky breath. "I care about you too," she admitted. "More than I know how to say. And it terrifies me." "Why?" he asked gently. "Because I've been hurt by people I trusted before," she said. "Because you're my boss, and I don't want people to think I'm using you or that you're using me. Because if this doesn't work, I lose more than a relationship. I lose my job, my stability, everything I've built." He nodded slowly. "Those are all valid fears," he said. "And I don't have perfect answers for them. But I can promise you this. I will never use my position to pressure you. If we do this, we do it as equals. And if it doesn't work, you still have a job here, or anywhere else you want to go, with the best reference I can give. Your livelihood is not conditional on my feelings." She swallowed hard. "You've thought about this a lot," she said. "Yes," he admitted, "because you're worth thinking about." Her vision blurred. "Can I have time?" she asked. "To think about what this means?" "Of course," he said immediately. "Take all the time you need." She nodded. "But Elena," he added. "Yes?" "While you're thinking," he said softly, "know that I'm not going anywhere. Whether you say yes or no, I'll still be here. You won't lose me." A tear slipped down her cheek. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. He gently wiped the tear away with his thumb. "You're safe with me," he whispered. "I promise." She believed him. That night, in her apartment, Elena sat on her couch with a cup of tea cooling in her hands. Her phone buzzed. "David. Thank you again for tonight. Sleep well." She stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back. "Thank you for being patient with me. Good night." She set the phone down and closed her eyes. For the first time in years, the idea of letting someone into her heart didn't feel like handing them a weapon. It felt like opening a door. Slowly, carefully, but opening it nonetheless. Elena didn't sleep well that night. Not because of nightmares, not because of fear, but because David's words kept circling through her mind like a song she couldn't stop humming. "You matter to me, not just as someone who works for me. If you feel even a fraction of what I feel when you walk into a room, you're safe with me, I promise." She'd heard promises before, from her ex, who swore he'd never raise his voice again until he did. From co-workers who said they'd have her back until it was inconvenient. From people who made her feel like love was something she had to earn and could lose at any moment. But David's promise felt different, not louder, quieter, like something built to last, not to impress. By the time the sun came up, she'd made a decision. Monday morning, she arrived at the office earlier than usual. The building was still half asleep, cleaning crew finishing up, a few early risers scattered across floors, the hum of computers booting up in distant cubicles. She set her bag down at her desk, turned on her computer, and pulled up a blank email. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then she started typing. "David, I've been thinking about what you said Saturday night. About us. About what this could be. I'm scared. I won't pretend I'm not. I've spent so long protecting myself that the idea of letting someone in feels like standing on the edge of something I can't see the bottom of. But I also know that you've shown me more care, more respect, and more patience in the last few months than most people have in years. You didn't just notice when I was hurt. You stayed. You didn't just offer help. You made sure I had choices. I don't know what this looks like. I don't know how we navigate the fact that you're my boss and that people will talk and that I'm still scared of so many things. But I want to try, if you're still willing to go slow, if you're still willing to be honest when things get hard, if you're still willing to let me set boundaries without taking it personally, then yes, I want to see where this goes. Elena, she read it 3 times, edited twice, then hit send before she could overthink it. Her heart pounded. She stood, walked to the small kitchen, and started the coffee, focusing on the familiar rhythm to keep her hands from shaking. By the time she returned to her desk, her inbox had a new message. From David. She opened it. Elena, I'm still willing. For all of it. Let's talk when I get in. She exhaled, a strange mix of relief and nervousness flooding her chest. She'd done it. She'd said yes to something that terrified her, and somehow, she didn't regret it. David arrived at 8:15. He stepped out of the elevator, coat folded over his arm, eyes finding hers immediately. Good morning, he said. Good morning, she replied. Do you have a few minutes? He asked. She nodded. He gestured toward his office. She followed him in, closing the door behind her. He didn't sit behind his desk. Instead, he pulled 2 chairs close together near the window and motioned for her to sit. I got your email, he said once they were both seated. I know, she said. I wasn't sure if I should have just told you in person. Either way works, he said. I'm just glad you felt safe enough to say it at all. She looked down at her hands. I meant what I said, about being scared. I know, he replied, and I meant what I said about going slow. What does slow look like? She asked. I've never done this, intentionally, with boundaries, with someone who actually listens. He thought about it. I think it looks like honesty, he said. If something feels too fast, you say so. If I do something that makes you uncomfortable, you tell me. If you need space, you take it. No guilt. And you? She asked. What do you need? He smiled faintly. I need you to trust that I won't punish you for honesty, that saying no or not yet won't make me pull away. I need you to believe that you're allowed to change your mind without losing what we've built so far. Her throat tightened. You make it sound so simple, she whispered. It's not, he said. But we don't have to figure out everything today. We just take the next step. Together. She nodded slowly. Okay, she said. What's the next step? He leaned back slightly, thinking. Transparency, he said. I think we need to be honest with the people who matter, not the whole company, but HR at minimum, so there's no perception of favoritism or hidden agendas, and so you're protected if anyone tries to weaponize this against you. She hadn't thought that far ahead. You want to tell HR? She asked, nerves spiking. I want to document it properly, he said, not because we're doing anything wrong, but because power dynamics are real, and I don't want you to be in a position where someone can claim I took advantage, or where you feel like you can't speak up if I overstep. She swallowed. That's smart and terrifying. Dana already knows something's shifted, he said gently. She's good at reading people. I'd rather we control the narrative than let rumors do it for us. Elena thought of the whisper she'd heard weeks ago. Okay, she said. We talked to Dana. Together, he added, so she hears it from both of us. Okay, she repeated. He reached out slowly, resting his hand palm up on the armrest between them. An invitation, not a demand. She looked at his hand. Then, after a breath, she placed hers in it. His fingers closed gently around hers. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for trusting me with this." "Thank you," she replied, "for making it feel safe to try." They met with Dana that afternoon. Dana's office was small, organized, and decorated with photos of her family and a row of succulents on the windowsill that somehow thrived despite the fluorescent lights. She looked up when they walked in together, eyebrows rising slightly. "This is either very good or very complicated," she said. "Both," David replied. Dana gestured to the chairs across from her desk. "Sit. Talk." Elena's palms were damp. David started. "Dana, I want to be transparent about something that's developed recently," he said. "Elena and I have started seeing each other, not in a professional capacity, personally." Dana's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened slightly. "Okay," she said. "How long?" "It's new," Elena said quickly. "We just talked about it this weekend." "And before that?" Dana asked. "Before that, it was concern and respect," David said. "Nothing inappropriate, but feelings developed, and rather than hide them or let rumors fill the gaps, we wanted to address it head on." Dana nodded slowly, looking at Elena. "How do you feel about this?" she asked. "Honestly," Elena took a breath. "Nervous," she admitted, "but hopeful. He's been nothing but respectful. I don't feel pressured. I feel seen." Dana's expression softened. "Good," she said. "That matters." She turned to David. "You understand the optics, I assume?" "Yes," he said. "Which is why we're here. I want to make sure Elena is protected. If we formalize this with HR, there's a record. If anyone tries to claim favoritism or coercion, there's documentation showing this was consensual, transparent, and handled appropriately." Dana tapped her pen against her desk. "I appreciate that," she said. "Not everyone thinks that far ahead." She pulled out a form. "We'll file this as a disclosed relationship," she said. "It doesn't change your reporting structure immediately, but it opens the door for us to adjust if needed. Elena, if at any point you feel uncomfortable or pressured, you come to me, directly. No questions asked." "Okay," Elena said. Dana looked at David. "And you," she said. "No special treatment. No using your position to influence decisions that affect her. If you two have a disagreement outside of work, it doesn't bleed into her performance reviews or her schedule." "Clear." "Crystal," David said. Dana signed the form and slid it across the desk. "Both of you sign here," she said. They did. Dana filed it carefully. "Congratulations," she said dryly. "You're now officially the most responsible couple I've documented this year." Elena laughed despite herself. "Is that a compliment?" she asked. "It is," Dana said, smiling. "Now get out of my office before I start asking about your intentions." David stood. "Thank you, Dana." "Don't thank me yet," she said. "Just don't make me regret supporting this." "We won't," Elena said quietly. Dana's expression gentled. "I believe you," she said. Walking back to the executive floor, Elena felt lighter. "That went better than I expected," she admitted. "Dana's good at her job," David said. "She knows the difference between protecting the company and protecting people. Luckily, in this case, they align." They reached her desk. He paused. "Can I take you to dinner tonight?" he asked. "Somewhere quiet. Just us." She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes," she said. "I'd like that." He smiled. "Good," he said. "I'll pick you up at 7. You don't have to." "I know," he said. "I want to." That evening, the restaurant he chose was tucked into a quiet corner of the city. Small, warm, with soft lighting and tables spaced far enough apart that conversations stayed private. They sat across from each other, menus untouched for the first few minutes. "This feels different," Elena said. "Different how?" he asked. "Like a real date," she said. "Not a meeting, not a favor. Just us." "It is just us," he said. She looked at him, really looked, at the way his tie was slightly loosened, at the faint tiredness around his eyes that came from too many late nights, at the way he smiled when he caught her staring. "What?" he asked. "I'm trying to figure out," she said slowly, "when I stopped being afraid of you." His smile faded slightly. "Were you afraid of me?" "Not of you," she clarified. "Of what you represented. Power. Control. The ability to make or break my stability with a single decision." He nodded. "That's fair. But somewhere along the way," she continued, "you stopped being my boss who noticed I was hurt and became someone I trusted. Someone I wanted to see. Someone I missed when I left the office." His eyes softened. "When did that happen for you?" he asked. She thought about it. "I think," she said, "it was the day you sat beside me instead of behind your desk. The day you gave me a choice instead of a command. The day you said, 'You're not alone,' and then proved it." He reached across the table. She met him halfway, their fingers intertwined. "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted. "I don't know how to be in something healthy. I only know how to survive things that hurt." "Then we learn together," he said. "I don't have all the answers either. But I know I'd rather figure it out with you than without you." Her eyes stung. "You keep saying things like that," she whispered. "I mean them," he replied. They talked through dinner, about small things, favorite books, worse jobs, childhood memories, about harder things, how David's father had walked out when he was 12, leaving his mother to work 2 jobs, how Elena's own father had been absent in a different way, present, but never really there. They didn't solve anything, but they shared it. And somehow, that mattered more. When the check came, Elena reached for her wallet. David raised an eyebrow. "I'm paying," he said. "That feels weird," she said. "Why?" he asked. "Because you already do so much," she said. "I don't want you to think I'm here for what you can give me." He set down his card and looked at her seriously. "Elena," he said, "if I thought that, we wouldn't be here. You've never asked me for anything. You've worked harder than anyone I know. Letting me buy you. Dinner isn't you taking advantage. It's me doing something I want to do. Let me." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay," she said. "But next time, I'm paying." "Deal," he said, smiling. He walked her to her door that night. The driver had dropped them at her building, and David had insisted on seeing her upstairs. At her apartment door, she turned to face him. "Thank you," she said, "for tonight. For everything." "You don't have to keep thanking me," he said gently. "I know," she said, "but I want to." He smiled. For a moment, they just stood there, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, close enough that if she leaned forward even slightly, their faces would almost touch. Her heart pounded. "Can I?" she started, then stopped. "Can you what?" he asked softly. "Can I hug you?" she asked. "Is that okay?" His expression melted. "Yes," he said. "Always." She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him carefully, like she was still learning the shape of this new thing between them. He hugged her back, steady and warm, his chin resting lightly on the top of her head. For a moment, the world narrowed to this. 2 people holding each other in a quiet hallway, trying to learn what safety felt like. When they pulled back, her eyes were bright. "Good night, David," she whispered. "Good night, Elena," he replied. He waited until she was inside, door locked, before he left. That night, lying in bed, Elena stared at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed. "David, I know we said slow, but I need you to know. Tonight was one of the best nights I've had in a long time." She smiled, typing back. "Me too." Another message appeared. "Sleep well. See you tomorrow." "You too." She set the phone down and closed her eyes. For the first time in years, falling asleep didn't feel like bracing for the next disaster. It felt like resting in the space between one good thing and the promise of another. 3 weeks into their relationship, reality began to press back. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in the small, steady ways that life always did when you tried to build something new on ground that hadn't fully healed. It started with a voicemail. Elena was at her desk, reviewing a contract for David's afternoon meeting, when her phone buzzed with a notification. New voicemail from unknown number. Her stomach twisted. She'd blocked her ex's number weeks ago, but he had a way of finding new ones. The restraining order had reduced the frequency of contact, but it hadn't eliminated it entirely. She stared at the screen, debating whether to listen or delete it unseen. David stepped out of his office, file in hand, and noticed the shift in her posture. "Everything okay?" he asked. She looked up. "I don't know yet." He crossed to her desk. "What happened?" She turned the phone toward him. Voicemail. Unknown number. His jaw tightened. "Do you want to listen to it?" "Not really," she admitted. "But I probably should. In case it's something Lisa needs to know about." "Do you want me here when you do?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, please." He pulled a chair over and sat beside her. She put the phone on speaker, volume low, and played the message. Her ex's voice filled the small space between them. Familiar. Cold. Laced with the kind of casual menace that had haunted her for months. "Elena, I know you're ignoring me. I know you think that piece of paper protects you. It doesn't. You can't just erase me. I'll be around, whether you like it or not." The message ended. Silence hung heavy. Elena's hands trembled. David's fists clenched on his knees, but his voice stayed calm. "Forward that to Lisa," he said. "Right now." She nodded, fingers shaking as she saved the voicemail and sent it to Lisa's email with a brief note. Another message. From a new number. "Thought you should have it." Lisa's reply came within minutes. "Got it. This strengthens the case for extending the order. I'll file the paperwork today. You did the right thing by saving it." "Are you safe right now?" Elena typed back. "Yes, I'm at work." Lisa sent one more message. "Good. Stay where there are people. I'll call you tonight." Elena set the phone down and exhaled shakily. David reached over slowly, resting his hand on the desk beside hers. Not taking, just offering. She placed her hand in his. "I hate this," she whispered. "I hate that he won't just stop. I hate that even when I do everything right, he still finds a way in." "I know," David said quietly. "And I'm sorry. You shouldn't have to deal with this." "I thought the restraining order would make it stop," she said, voice breaking slightly. "Or at least slow down. But he just adapts. New numbers. New ways to remind me he's still watching." David's thumb brushed gently over her knuckles. "He's trying to make you feel powerless," he said. "But you're not. Every time he does this, you document it. Every message, every violation, it builds the case against him. He thinks he's winning. He's actually digging his own hole." She looked at him, eyes red-rimmed. "Does it ever end?" she asked. "Or is this just my life now?" "It ends," he said firmly. "Maybe not today. Maybe not next week. But it ends. And in the meantime, you're not facing it alone." She nodded, swallowing hard. "I need a minute," she said. "Take as long as you need," he replied. She stood, walked to the small break room, and closed the door behind her. Leaned against the counter. Breathed. In. Out. In. Out. Her phone buzzed again. She flinched, then checked it. It was David. "You're stronger than he'll ever be. Don't let him take that from you." A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away and typed back, "Thank you." That evening, after Lisa called and walked her through the next legal steps, Elena sat on her couch feeling hollowed out. Her phone buzzed. David again. "Can I come over? Just to check on you. I'll leave if you want space." She stared at the message. Part of her wanted to say no, to curl up alone and let the exhaustion win. But another part, the part that had started trusting him, wanted him there. She typed back, "Yes, come over." 20 minutes later, there was a knock at her door. She checked the peephole out of habit, then opened it. David stood there in jeans and a sweater, holding a paper bag. "I brought soup," he said, "and bread, in case you hadn't eaten." Her throat tightened. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I know," he replied. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside. He walked in, setting the bag on her small kitchen counter, then turned to face her. "How are you?" he asked. "Tired," she admitted. "Angry, scared. All of it." He nodded. "That makes sense. I keep thinking," she said slowly, "that I should be over this by now, that I should be tougher, that I shouldn't let him get to me anymore." "You're human," David said. "Not a robot. You're allowed to feel what you feel." She sank onto the couch. He sat beside her, not too close, giving her space to decide. "Can I ask you something?" she said after a moment. "Always," he replied. "Why are you still here?" she asked. "We've been together less than a month. You could walk away. Find someone without all this mess. Someone easier." He turned to look at her fully. "I don't want easier," he said. "I want real. And you're real, Elena. All of you. The strength, the fear, the fight. I'm not here because I think you're a project I can fix. I'm here because I care about you. The whole person. Not just the parts that are easy to love." Her vision blurred. "What if it gets worse?" she whispered. "What if he escalates? What if staying with me puts you at risk?" "Then we handle it," he said simply. "Together." She shook her head. "You don't understand. He's dangerous," David finished. "Unpredictable. Willing to hurt people to feel powerful. I understand more than you think." She looked at him, surprised. "When I was younger," he said quietly, "I watched my mother deal with someone like him. My father wasn't physically violent, but he was controlling, manipulative. Made her feel like she couldn't survive without him. When she finally left, he tried everything to pull her back in. Apologies, threats, showing up uninvited. It took years for her to feel safe." Elena's breath caught. "I didn't know," she said. "I don't talk about it much," he admitted. "But I learned something from watching her. People like him thrive on isolation. They want you to think no one will believe you, no one will help you, no one will stay. The moment you prove them wrong, their power starts to crumble." "And you think we can prove him wrong?" she asked. "I know we can," he said. "Because you already have. You got the restraining order. You documented his violations. You told people what was happening. You didn't disappear. That's winning, Elena, even when it doesn't feel like it." She wiped at her eyes. "I'm so tired of being scared," she whispered. "I know," he said. "And you won't have to carry that alone anymore. Not if you don't want to." She looked at him. This man who had every reason to walk away and chose, again and again, to stay. "Can I lean on you?" she asked quietly. "Just for a minute?" "For as long as you need," he replied. She shifted closer, resting her head on his shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her carefully, holding her like she was something precious. They sat like that for a long time, her breathing slowly evening out, his presence steady and warm. "Thank you," she murmured eventually. "For what?" he asked. "For not making me feel weak for needing this," she said. "You're not weak," he said. "You're human. There's a difference." She smiled faintly against his shoulder. "You keep saying that," she said. "Because it's true," he replied. The following week, the restraining order was extended. The judge reviewed the new evidence: voicemails, text messages from burner numbers, a security report from Elena's building documenting a figure matching her ex's description lingering near the entrance. The order was extended for another year, with stricter terms. Lisa called Elena with the news. "He violated the first order multiple times," Lisa said. "That doesn't look good for him. If he contacts you again, the consequences escalate. He knows that now." "Do you think he'll stop?" Elena asked. "I think he'll get quieter," Lisa said honestly. "But people like him don't give up easily. Stay vigilant, keep documenting, and keep the people around you informed." "I will," Elena said. When she hung up, she sat at her desk, staring at nothing. David appeared in the doorway of his office. "Good news?" he asked. She nodded. The order was extended. Relief crossed his face. "That's a win." "It is," she agreed. "But Lisa thinks he'll just get sneakier." David walked over and leaned against the edge of her desk. "Then we stay prepared," he said. "Building security already has his photo flagged. Your building does too. The car service knows to watch for anyone following. You have people in your corner, Elena. He's one man. We're a network." She looked up at him. "When did you become so good at this?" she asked. "At what?" he asked. "At making me feel like I'm not fighting alone," she said. His expression softened. "The moment I decided you mattered to me," he said simply. That weekend, David kept his promise to take things slow, but he also made sure Elena didn't retreat into isolation. He invited her to a quiet brunch with Diane and Marcus. He took her to a small art exhibit she'd mentioned wanting to see months ago. He gave her space when she needed it, and stayed close when she asked. One evening, as they walked through a park near his house, the sky streaked with the last light of sunset. She stopped suddenly. "What?" he asked, turning back. She looked at him, framed by the fading light, and felt something shift inside her. Not fear, not hesitation. Something warmer. "Surer, I think I'm falling in love with you," she said quietly. Breath caught. "You don't have to say it back," she added quickly. "I just needed you to know, in case something happens. In case he—" "Elena," David interrupted gently. "Nothing's going to happen." "You don't know that," she said. "You're right," he said. "I don't. But I know this. I've been falling for you since the night you told me you were scared and still chose to trust me anyway. You don't have to wonder if I feel the same. I do." Her eyes filled. "You mean that?" she whispered. "Yes," he said. "I love you, not because you need me, not because I want to save you, but because you're strong and honest and real in a world that's taught me to expect masks. I love you because being with you feels like coming home." She closed the distance between them and kissed him, softly at first, then deeper, like she was pouring every ounce of trust and hope and fragile new love she had into that one moment. When they pulled back, both breathless, she rested her forehead against his. "I love you," she said again. "I love you too," he replied. And for the first time in a long time, Elena believed that love didn't have to come with conditions. It could just be. The storm wasn't over. Her ex hadn't disappeared. The fear hadn't fully left. But standing there, with David's arms around her and the world slowly darkening into night, Elena realized something important. She was no longer the woman who hid bruises and pretended she was fine. She was no longer the woman who carried everything alone. She was someone learning, slowly, carefully, to let love in. And that, more than any legal order or security measure, was the beginning of real freedom. 6 months after the restraining order was extended, Elena stood in front of a canvas for the first time in 3 years. The small art studio was tucked into a community center 2 blocks from her apartment. Bright, airy, with large windows that let in the afternoon light, and walls covered in works from students at every skill level. She'd signed up on a whim, or maybe not a whim. Maybe it was David who'd mentioned it casually one evening over dinner. "There's a watercolor class starting next month," he'd said. "Beginner friendly. You'd mentioned wanting to paint again." "I don't know," she'd said. "I'm not very good." "You don't have to be good," he'd replied. "You just have to enjoy it." So here she was, brush in hand, staring at a blank piece of paper that felt simultaneously full of possibility and impossibly intimidating. The instructor, a woman in her 60s with paint-stained fingers and a kind smile, walked past. "First time back?" she asked. "How did you know?" Elena asked. "You have the look," the instructor said. "Like you're asking the paper for permission." Elena laughed softly. "That obvious?" "It always is," the instructor said. "But here's the thing. The paper doesn't care. It's just waiting for you to start." Elena took a breath, dipped her brush into the blue paint, and touched it to the paper. The color bloomed, spreading in soft, uneven strokes. Not perfect, not controlled, but hers. She painted for 2 hours, losing herself in the rhythm of water and pigment, the way colors bled into each other and created something new. When the class ended, she stood back and looked at what she'd made. It wasn't a masterpiece. It was a sky, uncertain, abstract, a little messy. But it was something she'd created. For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of pride that had nothing to do with surviving. It had everything to do with living. That evening, she brought the painting home and set it on the kitchen counter while she made tea. Her phone buzzed. "David." "How was class?" She smiled and typed back. "Good." "Hard. I forgot how much I missed it. Did you make something?" "Yes. It's not great, but it's mine. I'd love to see it. Can I come over?" She glanced at the clock. It was nearly 8. "Aren't you tired?" "Not too tired for you. I'll bring dinner." She laughed softly. "Okay. See you soon." 20 minutes later, he was at her door, with takeout containers, and a smile that made her chest warm. "Show me," he said as soon as he stepped inside. She led him to the counter where the painting sat, still slightly damp at the edges. He studied it quietly, head tilted. "It's beautiful," he said. "It's messy," she corrected. "It's honest," he said. "That's better than perfect." She looked at him, at the way he saw her, not as a project, not as someone broken, but as someone whole, messy edges and all. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" he asked. "For reminding me I'm allowed to take up space doing something just because I want to," she said. He set the takeout down and turned to face her fully. "Elena," he said, "you've always been allowed. You just needed to believe it." She stepped closer and kissed him, soft and slow. When they pulled back, he smiled. "Keep painting," he said. "I want to see what else you create." "Deal," she said. Work had shifted too, not in obvious ways. Elena still arrived early, still managed David's calendar, still kept the executive floor running smoothly. But the weight of it felt different now. She wasn't performing survival anymore. She was doing work she was good at, for someone who valued her, in an environment where she no longer had to shrink herself to fit. One afternoon, David called her into his office for a meeting she hadn't scheduled. She walked in, curious. "Sit," he said. gesturing to the chair across from him. She sat. He slid a folder across the desk. "What's this?" she asked. "A proposal," he said. "From me. To you." She opened it. Inside was a detailed job description. Executive Operations Manager reporting directly to the CEO, responsibilities, strategic planning, cross-departmental coordination, high-level project oversight. Her eyes widened. "David," she said slowly, This is a promotion." "It is," he confirmed. "But," she looked up at him, "we're together. People will say you're playing favorites, that I didn't earn it." "Then they'd be wrong," he said calmly. "This has nothing to do with us being together. This has everything to do with the fact that you've been doing half this job already, without the title or the pay. I'm just making it official." "I don't have the degree for this," she said, doubt creeping in. "You have 3 years of experience keeping this office functional," he replied. "You have organizational skills most MBA graduates would kill for. You have the respect of everyone on this floor. A degree is just paper. You're the real thing." She stared at the folder. "I ran this by Dana and the board," he continued. "Not because I needed permission. This is my call. But because I wanted to make sure there was no perception of impropriety. They all agreed. Unanimously. You've earned this, Elena. Take it." Her hands trembled slightly. "What if I mess it up?" she whispered. "Then we adjust," he said. "That's what we do with everything else. But I don't think you will. I think you'll be brilliant." She looked at him. This man who kept seeing things in her she'd forgotten to see in herself. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it." His smile was warm, genuine. "Good," he said. "You start in 2 weeks. That gives us time to transition your current responsibilities and get you trained on the new systems." She nodded, still processing. "David?" she said. "Yes?" "Thank you," she said, "for believing in me, even when I don't." "I'll always believe in you," he replied. "That's not going to change." The promotion came with challenges, new responsibilities, new expectations, new whispers from people who couldn't separate her competence from her relationship with David. One morning, she overheard 2 junior executives in the break room. "She's only getting that role because she's sleeping with him," one said. "Must be nice," the other replied. "Skip the hard work and just date your way up." Elena froze in the hallway, the words hitting like a slap. She could have walked away, could have pretended she hadn't heard. But something in her, something that had been growing stronger over the last 6 months, refused. She stepped into the break room. Both executives went silent. "If you have concerns about my qualifications," Elena said calmly, "you're welcome to bring them to HR. They reviewed my promotion. So did the board. They all signed off on it because I've been doing this work for years without recognition. My relationship with David is documented, transparent, and has nothing to do with my ability to do my job." One of them flushed. "We didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," Elena said. "And I'm not going to apologize for being good at what I do, or for being with someone who respects that. If you can't separate the two, that's your problem, not mine." She turned and walked out, heart pounding but head high. Back at her desk, she took a slow breath. Her phone buzzed. "Dinah, I heard what happened in the break room. Well done. You didn't need me to step in, but know that I would have." Elena smiled, despite the adrenaline still buzzing through her veins. "Thank you. I think I'm getting the hang of this." Dana's reply was immediate. "You always had it. You just needed to trust yourself." That evening, she told David what had happened. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Proud," she said, "and a little shaky, but mostly proud." "Good," he said. "You stood up for yourself. That's not small." "I keep waiting for it to get easier," she admitted. But every time I think I've figured it out, something new tests me. That's life, he said. It doesn't stop testing you just because you pass one exam. But each time you get stronger. You prove to yourself that you can handle it. She leaned into him, and he wrapped his arms around her. Do you ever regret this? She asked quietly. Choosing me? Dealing with all the complications? Never, he said without hesitation. Not once. Even when people talk? She asked. Especially then, he replied, because it proves they don't know you the way I do, and I'm fine with that. Their opinions don't define us. She closed her eyes, letting his words settle over her like a blanket. I love you, she whispered. I love you too, he said. By the end of her first month in the new role, Elena had restructured 3 major projects, streamlined communication between departments, and earned quiet nods of respect from executives who'd initially questioned her. She still had doubters. She still had days when imposter syndrome crept in. But she also had something she'd never had before. Proof. Not just that she was capable, but that she deserved to be there. One Friday evening, as she packed up her things, David appeared at her desk. Busy tonight? He asked. Not particularly, she said. Good, he said. I have something to show you. What? She asked. You'll see, he replied. He drove them out of the city into the quiet stretch of road that led to his house, but instead of turning into his driveway, he kept going. Where are we going? She asked. Patience, he said, smiling. 5 minutes later, they pulled up to a small building she'd never noticed before, a converted warehouse with large windows and soft light spilling out. What is this? She asked. Come see, he said. They walked inside. The space was open, bright, with exposed brick walls and hardwood floors. In one corner, easels were set up. In another, a small seating area with comfortable chairs and bookshelves. It's a community studio, David said, for artists who need space but can't afford their own. They offer classes, open studio time, exhibitions for local work. Elena looked around, awed. It's beautiful, she said. It's yours, he said. She turned sharply. What? Not the whole building, he clarified quickly. But I secured you a spot, monthly membership, access whenever you want, your own corner to paint, to create, to take up space doing something that's just for you. Her eyes filled. David, she whispered, you didn't have to. I wanted to, he said. You've spent years making space for other people. It's time you had space that's just yours. She couldn't speak. She just stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. Thank you, she managed, voice muffled. You're welcome, he said softly, holding her close. When she finally pulled back, she wiped her eyes and laughed shakily. I'm going to cry every time you do something nice, aren't I? She said. Probably, he said, smiling. I'm okay with that. She looked around the studio again, imagining herself here, painting, creating, breathing. I don't know what I did to deserve you, she said quietly. You existed, he replied. That's all you ever had to do. 9 months into their relationship, Elena received a phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. She was in her new office, smaller than David's, but hers, with a window that looked out over the city and a desk that still felt surreal to sit behind. Her phone rang. Lisa Rodriguez. Elena answered immediately. Hi, Lisa, she said. Elena, Lisa said, her voice careful. I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay calm. Elena's stomach dropped. What happened? She asked. Your ex was arrested this morning, Lisa said. Elena's world tilted. What? She whispered. He violated the restraining order, Lisa continued. Again. But this time, he did it in a way that couldn't be ignored. He showed up at your old apartment building, the one you moved out of 2 months ago. and tried to force his way into what he thought was still your unit. The lieutenant called the police. When they arrived, he became aggressive. They arrested him on the spot. Elena couldn't breathe. "Is he—" she started. "He's in custody," Lisa said. "And because this is his third documented violation, the DA is pressing charges. This isn't just a civil matter anymore, Elena. This is criminal. He's looking at real consequences." Elena sank back in her chair, hand pressed to her chest. "Are you okay?" Lisa asked gently. "I don't know," Elena admitted. "I think so. I didn't expect this." "I know," Lisa said. "And I want you to understand something. This doesn't mean it's over. There will be hearings, maybe a trial. He'll likely try to plea down. But this is a turning point. He crossed a line he can't uncross." "What do I need to do?" Elena asked. "For now?" "Nothing," Lisa said. "I'll keep you updated. If the DA needs a statement from you, I'll be with you when you give it. But today, you just process this. And you stay safe. Okay?" "Okay," Elena said quietly. "Call me if you need anything," Lisa added. "Anytime." "Thank you," Elena said. When the call ended, she sat in the silence of her office, staring at the city beyond her window. Relief warred with disbelief. He was in custody. He couldn't call, couldn't show up, couldn't send threatening messages from new numbers. For the first time in over a year, he couldn't reach her. A knock on her door pulled her back. "Come in," she said. David stepped inside, concern already etched on his face. "I saw Lisa's name on your caller ID when I passed by," he said. "Is everything okay?" She looked at him, and suddenly the weight of it all crashed over her. "He was arrested," she said, voice breaking. David closed the door and crossed to her in 3 strides. "Tell me," he said gently, crouching beside her chair. She did. Every detail Lisa had shared, every emotion she couldn't name yet. When she finished, he took her hands in his. "How do you feel?" he asked. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Relieved? Scared? Guilty?" "Guilty," he repeated, brows knitting. "Why?" "Because part of me is glad he's suffering," she whispered. "And I don't know if that makes me a bad person." David shook his head. "It makes you human," he said. "He hurt you. He terrorized you. Feeling relief that he's facing consequences doesn't make you cruel. It makes you someone who values your own safety." A tear slipped down her cheek. "What if this makes it worse?" she asked. "What if he gets out and he's angrier? What if—" "Elena," David said firmly, cupping her face gently. "Look at me." She did. "He's not getting out anytime soon," David said. "And if he does, he knows the consequences now. He knows people are watching. He knows you're not alone. He's losing power, not gaining it." She nodded, swallowing hard. "I want to go home," she said quietly. "Then let's go," he replied. "I'll drive you." "You have meetings." "They can wait," he said. "You're more important." At her apartment, David didn't leave. He sat with her on the couch, not pushing her to talk, not filling the silence with empty reassurances. Just present. After a while, she rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you think I'll ever stop looking over my shoulder?" she asked. "I think it'll get easier," he said. "Not overnight, but with time." She closed her eyes. "I'm tired, David," she whispered. "I'm so tired of being afraid." "I know," he said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "But you won't be afraid forever. I promise." She wanted to believe him, and for the first time, she thought she might. The weeks that followed were a strange mix of relief and adjustment. Her ex remained in custody. The DA moved forward with charges. Lisa walked Elena through what to expect if the case went to trial. "You may be asked to testify," Lisa said during one of their meetings, "to describe the harassment, the threats, the fear. It won't be easy, but it's also your chance to be heard, to tell your story in a space where it matters. I don't know if I'm strong enough, Elena admitted. You've already proven you are, Lisa said. Everything you've done up to this point, leaving him, getting the restraining order, documenting his violations, rebuilding your life, that's strength. Testifying is just the last step. Elena nodded slowly. Will you be there? She asked. Every second, Lisa promised. The hearing was set for a cold morning in early March. Elena woke that day with her stomach in knots. David had stayed over the night before, knowing she'd need the support. You don't have to do this alone, he said as they got ready. I'll be in the courtroom. So will Lisa. You're surrounded. I know, she said. I'm still scared. That's okay, he replied. Scared doesn't mean weak. She nodded, but her hand still shook as she buttoned her blouse. David stepped behind her and gently stilled her hands with his own. Breathe, he said softly. She did. In, out. You've got this, he whispered. She turned to face him. What if I freeze? She asked. What if I can't get the words out? Then you pause, he said. You take your time, and you remember that every word you say is one more step toward freedom. She kissed him, slow and grounding. I love you, she said. I love you too, he replied. Now let's go finish this. The courtroom was smaller than she expected. Sterile, fluorescent, impersonal. Her ex sat at the defense table, flanked by his lawyer. He looked thinner, angrier, diminished. When his eyes found hers, she felt the old instinct to shrink, to look away. But she didn't. She held his gaze for one long second, then turned to face the front. Lisa sat beside her, calm and steady. David sat 2 rows back, his presence a quiet anchor. When it was time, Elena was called to the stand. She walked forward, legs unsteady but moving. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Then she sat. The prosecutor asked her questions, simple ones at first, establishing timeline and context, then harder ones. Can you describe the incident on the night of November 14th? Did he ever threaten you directly? How did his behavior make you feel? Elena answered each one. Her voice shook at first, but as she spoke, something shifted. The fear that had lived in her chest for so long began to loosen, because she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was testifying. She was standing up. She was telling the truth in a room where it mattered. When the defense attorney tried to twist her words, suggesting she'd exaggerated, that she'd led him on, Lisa objected immediately. The judge sustained it. Elena kept her composure. When it was over, she stepped down from the stand, legs shaking but head high. David's eyes met hers from across the room. Proud, steady, full of love. She'd done it. The judge issued his ruling 2 weeks later. Her ex was sentenced to 18 months in jail, followed by 5 years of probation and a permanent restraining order. No contact, no exceptions. When Lisa called with the news, Elena sat down hard on her couch. It's over, Lisa said gently. Really over. Elena couldn't speak for a moment. Then she whispered, Thank you. For everything. You did this, Lisa said. I just walked beside you. When the call ended, Elena sat in silence. Then she called, David. It's over, she said when he answered. I know, he replied. Lisa texted me. How do you feel? Free, she said, the word breaking on a sob. I feel free. You are, he said, and you always will be. That night, David came over with flowers. Simple, bright, nothing extravagant, and held her while she cried. Not from sadness, from release. From relief. From the overwhelming realization that she'd survived something she once thought would destroy her. I'm proud of you, David said quietly. I couldn't have done it without you, she replied. Yes, you could have, he said. But I'm glad you didn't have to. She pulled back to look at him. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," he said, smiling, "you live. Really live. Not in survival mode. Not looking over your shoulder. Just living." She smiled through her tears. "I think I'm ready for that," she said. "Good," he replied, "because I plan on being there for all of it." 3 months later, Elena stood in her studio space, the one David had secured for her, putting the finishing touches on a painting. It was the largest piece she'd done since returning to art. A landscape, open sky, rolling hills. A single figure in the distance, walking forward, back to the viewer, moving toward the horizon. It wasn't about looking back, it was about moving forward. David appeared in the doorway, 2 coffee cups in hand. "Thought you might need this," he said. She smiled and took one. "What do you think?" she asked, gesturing to the canvas. He studied it quietly. "It's you," he said finally. "Free," she nodded. "It is," she agreed. He slipped an arm around her waist, and she leaned into him. "I have something to ask you," he said. She looked up at him, curious. He set his coffee down and reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. "Elena," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I don't need a grand speech. I just need you to know that you're the best decision I've ever made, the bravest person I've ever known. And I want to spend the rest of my life walking forward with you." He opened the box. A simple ring sat inside, elegant, understated, perfect. "Will you marry me?" he asked. Tears streamed down her face. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she kissed him, pouring every ounce of love and gratitude and hope she had into that moment. When they pulled back, both smiling through tears, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said. "I love you too," she replied. And in that small studio, surrounded by paint and possibility, Elena realized something profound. She'd started this journey as a woman hiding bruises, convinced no one would notice or care. She was ending it as a woman who'd been seen, supported, and loved, not despite her scars, but as a whole person who'd fought her way into the light. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was something better. It was real. And it was hers. The wedding was small. Not because they couldn't afford something grand. David could have rented out entire venues without blinking, but because Elena wanted something that felt like them, intimate, real, surrounded by people who'd walked beside them, not crowds who came for spectacle. They chose a garden venue just outside the city, where spring flowers bloomed in wild, unstructured beauty, and string lights hung between trees like captured stars. 40 guests. Diane, who cried the moment she saw Elena in her dress. Marcus, who gave a toast so heartfelt it left half the room misty-eyed. Priya and Sam, who bickered good-naturedly about who had predicted the engagement first. Lisa Rodriguez, who sat near the front and smiled like a proud mentor watching her student graduate. Donna from HR, who'd quietly ensured Elena's path through the company remained fair and earned. Mrs. Ramos from Elena's old building, who'd brought homemade empanadas and declared David a good man finally. And Elena's mother, who'd flown in 2 days before, held her daughter's face in both hands and whispered, "I'm so proud of you, Mija. So proud." No one from David's father's side. No one from Elena's ex's orbit. Just people who'd proven through action and presence that love wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was quiet, consistent, and willing to show up even when things got hard. Elena stood in the small bridal suite, staring at herself in the mirror. Her dress was simple, ivory, flowing, with delicate lace at the shoulders. Her hair was swept back loosely, a few soft curls framing her face. Minimal makeup, a small bouquet of wildflowers in her hands. She looked like herself, not a version edited for someone else's expectations. Just her. Diane knocked softly and stepped inside. "You ready?" she asked. Elena turned. "I think so. Is that weird? That I'm not nervous?" Diane smiled. "Not weird at all. It means you're sure." "I am," Elena said. "I've never been more sure of anything." Diane crossed the room and adjusted a strand of Elena's hair with gentle fingers. "I've known David a long time," she said quietly. "I've watched him build companies, make ruthless decisions, carry weight most people couldn't imagine. But I've never seen him as happy as he is with you." Elena's eyes stung. "He saved me." "No," Diane said firmly. "He supported you. You saved yourself. Don't ever forget that." Elena swallowed hard, nodding. "Thank you," she whispered. Diane squeezed her hand. "Now let's go get you married." The ceremony was held beneath a canopy of trees, with the late afternoon sun filtering through the leaves in soft gold streaks. Elena walked down the aisle alone, not because no one offered, but because she'd chosen to. "I've walked through a lot on my own," she'd told David when they were planning. "I want to walk toward you the same way, on my own feet, by my own choice." He'd understood immediately. So she walked, past familiar faces, past people who'd seen her at her lowest, and stayed. Past the life she'd survived, and into the one she was building. And at the end of the aisle, David stood waiting. In a dark suit, no tie, eyes locked on hers like she was the only person in the world. When she reached him, he offered his hand. She took it. The officiant, a close friend of David's who'd known him since college, smiled warmly. "We're here today," he began, "not because love is easy, but because these two people chose each other even when it wasn't. They chose honesty over pretense, patience over shortcuts, presence over perfection." He looked at David. "Do you have your vows?" David nodded, turning fully toward Elena, hands holding hers gently. "Elena," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "When I met you, I didn't know I was meeting the person who would change my life. You were quiet, efficient, someone I relied on professionally. But somewhere along the way, I started noticing things that had nothing to do with work." He paused, smiling faintly. "The way you made coffee exactly right without being asked. The way you remembered details about people others overlooked. The way you carried weight no one saw and still showed up every day with grace." His voice softened. "And then I saw the bruise, and I realized that beneath all that grace was a fight I'd never fully understood. You weren't just surviving, Elena. You were refusing to disappear. And when you finally let me in, when you trusted me with your truth, I knew I'd spend the rest of my life proving that trust wasn't misplaced." Tears slipped down Elena's cheeks. "I don't promise to save you," David continued, "because you don't need saving. I promise to stand beside you, to listen when you need to be heard, to hold you when words aren't enough, to celebrate your wins and weather your storms. I promise to love you, not in spite of your past, but because of the strength it forged in you." He squeezed her hands. "I choose you," he said. "Today, tomorrow, always." The officiant turned to Elena. "Your vows?" Elena took a shaky breath, blinking through tears. "David," she said, voice trembling but clear, "I spent a long time believing I wasn't worth noticing, that I had to stay small to stay safe. That love was something I'd have to earn over and over, and even then, it could be taken away." She looked into his eyes. "And then you asked, 'Who did this?' And you didn't look away when I told you. You didn't make me feel weak for being hurt. You didn't try to fix me like I was broken. You just stayed." Her voice cracked. "You gave me space to heal. You respected my boundaries. You celebrated my wins without needing credit. You loved me when I didn't know how to love myself." She smiled through her tears. I don't have grand promises, she said. I don't have perfect words. But I promise to keep choosing you. To keep being honest, even when it's hard. To keep showing up, even on days when I'm scared. To keep loving you with everything I've learned about what love should actually be. She squeezed his hands. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me, for staying, for making me believe I deserve this. David's eyes shone. The officiant smiled, wiping at his own eyes. By the power vested in me, he said, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may. David didn't wait for permission. He cupped Elena's face and kissed her, soft and deep, like a promise kept. The small crowd erupted in applause and cheers. When they pulled apart, both laughing through tears, the officiant grinned. I was going to say that, but sure, go ahead. Everyone laughed. David took Elena's hand, and they walked back down the aisle together. Not as boss and assistant, not as survivor and protector, as partners, as equals, as husband and wife. The reception was held under the same canopy of lights, with long tables covered in simple linens and mismatched chairs that somehow felt perfect. There was music, live, acoustic, the kind that invited swaying more than dancing. There were toasts. Marcus spoke about the first time he'd met Elena and how he'd known immediately she was the real deal. Diane spoke about watching David transform from a man who lived in his head to someone who finally lived in his heart. Sam made everyone laugh with a story about David trying to cook a romantic dinner and nearly setting off the fire alarm. And Lisa, quiet, steady Lisa, stood and raised her glass. To Elena, she said simply, who taught me that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, persistent, brave enough to ask for help and wise enough to accept it. You've come so far, and I'm honored to have been part of your journey. Elena's throat tightened as she raised her glass in return. Thank you, she mouthed. Lisa nodded. Later in the evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the lights glowed brighter, David pulled Elena onto the small dance floor. A soft instrumental played. No lyrics, just melody. He held her close, one hand at her waist, the other cradling hers. How are you feeling? He asked quietly. Happy, she said. Really, truly happy. Good, he said, smiling. That's all I ever wanted? They swayed in comfortable silence for a moment. Do you remember, Elena said, the day you asked me who did this? Every detail, David replied. I was so scared, she admitted. I thought you'd send me to HR and pretend you never saw it. I thought I'd lose my job, my stability, everything. And instead, he prompted gently. Instead, she said, smiling through fresh tears, you gave me the safest place I've ever known. He pulled her closer, resting his cheek against her hair. You gave me something too, he said. What? She asked. Purpose, he said simply. I've spent my whole life building things, companies, portfolios, reputations. But nothing I've ever built mattered as much as building a life with you. She pulled back to look at him, eyes shining. I love you, she said. I love you too, he replied. And as they danced, beneath the lights, surrounded by people who'd loved them through the hard parts, Elena felt something she'd once thought impossible. Peace. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of safety. The knowledge that she was seen, valued, and loved, not for what she could offer, not for how little space she took up, but for who she was. Whole, worthy, free. 1 year later, Elena stood in front of a classroom full of women, her hands resting lightly on the podium. The community center was small, but the room was full. Women of all ages, backgrounds, stories. Some sat with arms crossed, guarded. Others leaned forward, hungry for hope. Elena recognized every posture. She'd worn them all. "My name is Elena," she began. "And a few years ago I stood where some of you might be standing now, scared, ashamed, convinced that what was happening to me was somehow my fault." She paused, letting the words settle. "I'm here to tell you it wasn't. And whatever you're going through, it's not your fault either." She told her story, not all of it, but enough. The bruise, the fear, the moment someone noticed and refused to look away, the legal battles, the small victories, the slow, hard work of rebuilding. "I didn't wake up one day magically healed," she said. "Healing isn't linear. Some days I still flinch at loud voices. Some days I still check over my shoulder. But those days are fewer now. And the life I've built, the career, the love, the art, the peace, it's real. And it's mine." She looked out at the faces staring back at her. "You deserve that too," she said. "Safety, respect, love that doesn't come with conditions. And it starts with believing you're worth it. Even when it's hard. Even when you're scared. You're worth it." When the session ended, several women approached her. One, a younger woman with red-rimmed eyes, whispered, "Thank you." I needed to hear that. Elena squeezed her hand gently. "You're not alone," she said, "and you're stronger than you know." That evening, Elena returned home, to the house she and David had bought together 6 months after the wedding. It wasn't huge, but it was theirs. With a sunroom she'd converted into a studio, with a kitchen where they cooked together on weekends, with a backyard where they'd planted a garden that was still more ambition than success. David was in the kitchen when she walked in, apron on, stirring something on the stove. "How did it go?" he asked. "Good," she said, setting her bag down. "Hard, but good." He turned off the stove and crossed to her, pulling her into a hug. "I'm proud of you," he said. "For what?" she asked. "For turning your pain into purpose," he said. "For helping people who are where you used to be. For not letting what happened to you define your whole story." She rested her head against his chest. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said. "Maybe," he said, "but you did it. That's what matters." She pulled back and smiled. "What's for dinner?" she asked. "Attempt number 3 at lasagna," he said. "No promises," she laughed. "I'll help." They worked side by side, chopping vegetables, layering pasta, talking about their days. It was ordinary. Beautifully, perfectly ordinary. And that, Elena realized, was the greatest victory of all. Not the dramatic rescue, not the courtroom triumph, but this. A quiet evening, a shared meal, a life built on trust, respect, and love that didn't demand she be anything other than herself. Later that night, as they sat on the couch with plates balanced on their laps and a movie playing softly in the background, Elena turned to David. "Do you ever think about that first day?" she asked. "When you saw the bruise?" "All the time," he admitted. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Getting involved? Taking on all the complications?" He set his plate down and turned to face her fully. "Elena," he said, "that was the day my life started making sense. Everything before it, the companies, the money, the success, it was all just noise. You were the first real thing I'd built in years, and I'd do it all again. Every hard conversation, every legal meeting, every moment of uncertainty. Because it brought me here. To you. To this." She set her own plate down and kissed him, slow and full of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered against his lips. "For what?" he asked. "For asking the question," she said. "For not looking away. For being the kind of man who saw someone in pain and decided it mattered." "You mattered," he corrected gently. "You always did." She smiled, and in that moment, Surrounded by the ordinary magic of a life she'd fought so hard to build, Elena understood something profound. Love didn't begin with grand gestures. It began with someone noticing, with someone asking, "Who did this?" And meaning, beneath it all, "You're not alone anymore." And she wasn't. She never would be again.